What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel, your go-to place for all things Lions related. We're talking about updates, news, analysis, which is basically what we're going to get into today, and so much more. All of those things you can find not only here on the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel, but you can also find it over on the Pride of Detroit website, which is prideofdetroit.com. So after you finish watching this video, definitely make sure to go check out our website. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're looking for, a new way to find Lions content, this is, again, the go-to place to do that. So hitting that subscribe button, hitting that notification bell, both of those things will make it a lot easier for you to find our content. We upload multiple times throughout the week, on top of the fact that we also do a couple live streams as well over here on YouTube. So again, if you want to stay plugged in, that's the easiest way of doing that. I'm your host, Miko, joined by my guy, Morgan Cannon. Morgan is one of our lead writers over at the Pride of Detroit website. Morgan, what's going on with you, my guy?
Chilling, man. Happy it's Friday. Excited for this game this weekend. It's a big game. I know it's really early in the season, so I think it's sometimes a little crazy to call any game a really big game, but it's for sole possession of the NFC North, the NFC. So I think it's a statement game, in my opinion. What do you think?
I was going to say, maybe that's the better word, right? Statement game, because again, it is early in the season, but it's also against a division opponent. And Dan Campbell loves to say games like these count for two. So I don't think you're wrong for calling it a big game. It's a game that, again, going by Coach Campbell's standards, it counts for two. If you really want to be able to, take that lead in the division and again, do what you did last year if you're the Detroit Lions and win the division, it starts by, making sure that you can contend and beat your division rivals. So, no, I'm really excited for this one, excited for the game. I'm excited, honestly, just for the weekend. I'm planning on taking the kids out to, you ever heard of Tiger Market out in Southfield?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the kids to go check that out. So I'm kind of excited about that. So I'm going to be able to have hopefully some instant ramen that I can have right before the game. It's going to be a nice chill Sunday. Hopefully watching the Lions whoop on the Vikings.
Yeah, be prepared to walk around in there. That's really cool. If y'all are in the Metro Detroit area, take yourselves to Tiger Market in Southfield. You won't be sad, man. You get all kinds of snacks, delicious foods. Can't get rid of it anywhere else.
Seriously,
it's a Korean grocery store. So if that's your thing, go check it out for sure.
Yeah, we took the kids a couple weeks ago to their first Asian market, and they loved it. And so found another one. About to go check that one out. So
do it.
Most of you probably are not here, though, to hear about what me and Morgan are doing over the weekend. You are here to figure out how dangerous are the Minnesota Vikings. And Morgan, we could definitely sit here for well over an hour and talk about this team from top to bottom, right? We could talk about them offensively. We could talk about them defensively, but we're going to spend this film study talking about them defensively. And since we play them twice in a year, maybe in the next film study, we'll focus on them offensively because we'll have a much bigger sample size of what they're doing offensively. But what they've been doing defensively is pretty impressive when you look at, first and foremost, what they're doing in defending the run. But even when it comes to defending the pass, while they may not have the most impressive rankings in terms of how many yards and touchdowns they're giving up, they are turning the ball over at an alarming rate at this early juncture in the season. So that's kind of where we want to spend a good amount of our time today, is just going through this defense, focusing on what they're doing in the pass game, as well as talking about what they're doing in the run game as well.
Yeah, and y'all know about the offense, man, and that probably can be something we focus on, the next time the Lions play the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, best receiver in football by a pretty wide margin, if you ask me. Really, really good offensive line. I think jury's still out for Sam Darnold. I think he's played well, but he's also not looked so hot these last, game and a half. If you watch them, I think everyone has, because they were on national TV a couple times there. So yeah, it was interesting to focus on the defense. Got a good look at the offense too, but like you said, focused on the defense and what they're doing. They're first in EPA per play as a defense, top 5 in most advanced metrics, and their pressure rate 36.4% according to NFL Pro. Love that website now, which is good for 8th in the NFL. So Brian Flores, their defensive coordinator, he's lauded as one of the better defensive minds in football, rightfully so. Really mixes it up, likes to stay in a too high shell. So the blitz rate, let's talk some numbers real quick. So the Vikings, 47% is their blitz rate on first and second down. That's the highest in the league. So that's what they do. They're going to try to run blitz. They're going to try to shoot gaps and get downhill and try to get you before you can get rolling, right? Because that's what you want to do for the Lions, to nip them in the bud, slow down that elephant before it gets rolling,
Mm-hmm.
because once it gets rolling, it's tough to stop, right? So 47%, 28% on third down, and the highest rate of split safety looks, which is going to be something we focus on here. So in the film study, so too high, right? They're gonna be in too high at like 66, like 2/3 of the time, 66% of the time. So it's a good way they want to stop the run, and then they want to not give up the big play, and they're going to force turnovers, in their opinion. And what was the numbers, Miko? It's like 11 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries.
Yeah, 11
Uh,
interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, 3 forced fumbles. Again, only within 5 games of the season, because they were just on their
Crazy
bye week.
rate.
So
Yeah.
it's a crazy rate. You're talking about 2 to 3 turnovers per game, and that's a game changer in a lot of these close games in the NFL. The team that typically can win the turnover battle is oftentimes the team that wins, and I think that's one of the reasons why Minnesota has been off to such a good start this year. Yes, you talked about it. Like their offense, the names, we know them. Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, the offensive line is stout. Jordan Addison has missed some games, but has been reliable when he's been available. Jalen Naylor has made a really big impact. And so that is like, I think, what people expected. Even with the Sam Darnold calling the shots, like when you have talented skill players, it kind of makes the quarterback's job relatively easy. And then you have a really good offensive-minded head coach that, again, makes everything kind of run fairly smoothly, where as a quarterback, Sam Darnold just has to worry about not messing things up. But things defensively, you look at some of the teams that they've played, Morgan. Yes, they've played the Giants, but outside of the Giants, like on paper, if I told you at the beginning of the year that the Vikings were going to play the 49ers, the Texans, and Green Bay, you would be like, that's a tough, and maybe the Jets, maybe, right? If you were going to throw the Jets a bone, you might be like, that's a tough gambit to run early in the season. And for the most part, like I said, Minnesota has held their own. They completely blitzed the Texans. And so that's the thing that's going to be really exciting to kind of get into. And so we're going to start with going through this defense. Let's start with their weakness in this defense, Morgan, or at least what we perceive to be their weakness, which is their pass defense. Even though they have 11 interceptions, they don't always do the best job in defending the pass, right?
The Vikings, though, if I were to, ping like a specific weakness, I would definitely go with their, pass defense. Personnel is okay when you roll through it. It's Stephon Gilmore is their best corner at 34 years old, still doing it. They got Byron Murphy at nickel a lot of the time, and then Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith at safety. And who's their other corner, Miko, at the top of my head there?
Shaq Griffin.
Shaq Griffin. Brain fart for a second. So, like you talked about before, we jumped on. They did change. They overhauled their secondary pretty good, just because there was a good amount of turnover from last season. But yeah, when you turn on the tape, there's some hiccups, we'll say, on the pass defense. And the Packers, for this game, to give some context, the Vikings jumped out again, like they did the Texans, like to a 28-0 lead, like really early.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packers stormed back. This is pretty incredible to watch. Even when you watch it on the All-22, you're like, what is going on? And they ended up losing 31-29 when it was all said and done. But yeah, deep shot to Wicks. They only rush 4. So again, they're going to be in the too high a lot of the time, right? That's what they want to stay in, just to prevent plays like these. But yeah, he runs it out and up, basically. Dontavian Wicks does. Reed running that post in the slot draws the eyes of the safety. It's not even really a great throw, but the window is massive and pretty easy pitch and catch. He gets hit there. He can't really step into it. But yeah, you see how much space Wicks has right here when he catches the ball still. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and this is something that, again, if you're the Lions and you're seeing them, roll into these types of coverages, or again, just not being able to have the type of communication that you want to, like, this is something that should have you, like, again, salivating at the mouth, because again, you put a Jamison Williams or an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Tim Patrick, who's been really, good for them on some of these deep routes. This can be devastating to the Vikings, because we have the offensive firepower to really, get plays like these in chunks.
Yeah, and this is what puts you in a bind when you play the Lions, because you would like to play too high, right? Just to be safe. You have Jameson Williams now, but if you do that, it's going to be tough to slow down the Lions' running game, in my opinion. Like, we've seen plenty of tape on that now to trust that that's pretty close to a fact. So it puts you in a bind, because I don't think Flores wants to play single high against the Lions, because it's going to invite Ben Johnson to be like, okay, we're going to see what JMO can do real quick then, and to take the top off this thing. And that's where I think it could get tough. Minnesota's defense is good. When you watch them play, they rally to the football quickly. They're a good tackling defense for sure. Next play, they're rolling to a too high right before pre-snap, but this is just kind of a weird rep, man. We were talking about it. Hicks runs a post, and it's an easy throw because of the steps Bynum takes, like down towards that out, towards the top of your screen. And Harrison Smith is late, and it's a good throw by Love, but it's also a relatively easy throw, right?
I was going to say, like, this went from being like a very difficult throw for Jordan Love to a very easy throw just by Bynum, like you said, making a misstep, right? I mean, we know that by playing the secondary position, there is a certain level of anticipation that has to happen, right? Especially if you're playing safety. Oftentimes when you're playing safety, you're watching the eyes of the quarterback, or you're watching things develop in front of you. So you can see if someone's probably about to break into your zone, which I think is what Bynum saw here, is like, oh, Dontavian Wicks is cutting inside here, so let me take away this window that's going to open up. The problem is he takes that step just 1 or 2 seconds too early. If he holds for another split second, because Jordan Love is getting this ball out. He has pressure closing in on him. He's trying to get this ball out. But again, you hold your position a little bit longer, and Bynum probably has his 3rd interception on the season and probably taking this the other way. But again, you jump the route too early. The receiver goes past the window that you thought he was going to be in, and Jordan Love is able to hit him on the backside. And then, like you mentioned, Harrison Smith isn't quite at the depth that he needs to be able to help out in this situation.
Yeah, that was an elite pause before, too, because you got Bynum right as he took those steps forward. And yeah, I don't know what Smith's doing, because all you see at the bottom of your screen is Dobbs running that out. So I'm not really sure why he's lingering over there so far, and no one's up the seam. So he definitely could get over, but he makes this easy. Love made some really throws that day. I remember watching that game live, because it was fun to watch live that second half, because it was just chaos, man. But then, that was just, you made it easy by taking those steps. And it's a good safety duo. Like Bynum, you could do a lot worse than Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith, but there's room for the Lions to make some plays, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely worth pointing out, right? Between Bynum and Smith, you have 3 interceptions, for your secondary. Like we talked about, like, what you and I were talking about beforehand, like the fact that every starting player in their secondary has a pick is pretty impressive, right? There's a lot of teams that don't get that type of, share of turnovers. Like, it's maybe 1 or 2 guys on your defense that are, true ball hawks, and like maybe one guy or another guy maybe gets lucky with a tip pass. But again, for both of your outside corners, both of your safeties, and a couple of your linebackers, plus your nickel corner, also all have interceptions. On top of the fact, we didn't even mention Josh Metellus, which, well, we'll mention him once we start talking about run defense, because that dude's a problem when it comes down to defending the run. But all of those guys are taking advantage of this Vikings defense and getting turnovers. We have one more play here, Morgan, of the pass coverage, and just kind of walk us through what you saw here when you were kind of looking at this play.
So I wanted to illustrate this, because this is kind of the Brian Flores madness, right? So it's 4:38 left in the second quarter, 1st and 10, and they do crazy stuff like this on first down, but as it can be difficult to, decide who's coming, right? So what you're going to see is Cashman is not going to, I don't think he's not going to play this Sunday from what we're hearing. And then Pace, both good linebackers. They're under 240 pounds, but at the last second, they're going to walk up and mug the line of scrimmage. Purdy's going to change the play. So they're going to shift. And you'll see at the top of the screen, Harrison Smith will roll down and Gilmore rolls up, and they end up just in like a cover 2 shell. But I don't really know what Pace is doing. He flies up the seam, and there's a pretty big window there for Purdy to make this throw. So this is this is something you're going to see a lot on Sunday because this is a staple in Flores's defense. They're going to mix it up. They're going to do funky stuff like this, walk a bunch of guys up to the line of scrimmage. And what they're trying to do is just have Goff slow down a little bit in his process because he's like, okay, who's rushing the quarterback, who's dropping, and who's hot. And that's how Van Ginkel, like we talked about at the top, that's how Van Ginkel's gotten 2 pick sixes because the quarterbacks just didn't anticipate him being where he was going to be, and he got it, and they're both pretty easy plays, just being where you need to be on defense. So as long as the Lions are prepped to deal with this and their communication is sound, I think they're, like we talked about, there's meat on the bone, if you will. Like there's some, you can make some plays against this defense. They're going to get theirs, in my opinion. And that's what Flores wants. They want to get you what we're going to show here against the how they are against the run from last year. They want to get you behind the sticks, and they want to get you into third and obvious passing down so they can do funky stuff like that and force turnovers.
No, and I love how you broke down, like, again, how like Brian Flores' mentality when he's having all of this late motion, all of this late adjustments. It causes your offense to take more time off the play clock because now everything has to reset. And like you said, Jared Goff has to now re-communicate something, or even find out if he may have went to the line initially thinking he had, an advantage in a certain matchup. But then you see things like that where you're swapping Harrison Smith and Stephon Gilmore, flipping their positioning on the field. And now it's like, okay, do I still want to throw the ball over there? Because now Harrison Smith seems to be playing corner and Stephon Gilmore seems to be playing safety. Like, it's those little nuances to the game, the little bit of chess match that can be going on that all of a sudden, it may not necessarily result in an incompletion, because like we saw in that play, right? Like the Niners still picked up a really big chunk play, but it's things like that all of a sudden now you're, having a delay of game, or maybe somebody's false starting or something like that, or someone's just not doing what they're supposed to do. And now you're able to take advantage of that, getting penalties or whatever the case may be. So no, it's something that I do think the Lions will have the ability to take advantage of this. We saw them do it last year in the second matchup against the Vikings, where they threw for over 300 yards. And I think it's something that they're capable of doing now, because I feel like they're in a really good rhythm, just like the Vikings are at this early start of the season. But I think, Morgan, to your point that you were mentioning, the thing that they do still have to contend with is how good this Vikings defense is in defending the run. And I do think there's a little bit of nuance to what they've been able to do this year in defending the run, right? Like they've held every team that they've played against under 100 yards except for the Niners. And I think that's telling. Like, I don't think that's just a fluke. I think that's the Niners are one of the best running football teams in the NFL, whether they have Christian McCaffrey or they don't. But every other team that they've played against, you're talking about Devin Singletary, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, who came very close, and then a Jets backfield.
Play that game. Just to clarify there, yeah, I was like,
so even better, right? Like, you didn't even get to go against Joe Mixon, who was actually, I think, has been having a pretty good year, and then a Jets team that has very good running backs, but not always like the best offensive line. So like, I do think there's a little bit of nuance. So when we decided to, look at the film for how the Vikings defend the run, what better team to look at than when they played us? And they actually did hold the Lions in check when we played them last year in week 17 or week 18. My bad.
Yeah.
I'm tripping. Week 18.
It's weird saying week 18. I feel you.
Right. Still. Last year in week 18, where they held the Lions to 70 yards rushing. And it was bad, Morgan. Like, going back through this tape and looking at how they were defending the run, like, this wasn't fluky stuff, right? David Montgomery and Josh and Jahmyr Gibbs, both, their biggest run of the day was only 8 yards. And we saw a lot of things like this where, again, the Vikings utilizing their aggressiveness to kind of create havoc for the Lions in the backfield.
Yeah, and it's kind of how Aaron Glenn and the Lions like operate on defense is a little bit how B-Flow operates. Like, he wants to stop you on early downs. They don't want you to be able to run the ball. They want to make you more one-dimensional than anything, just so they can focus on stopping the pass and limiting big plays. And they mugged, when you watch this tape, they mugged the line of scrimmage a lot. You've got 7-8 players in the box, and it makes it difficult to run some of these zone concepts, in my opinion, just because you have the ability as a linebacker. I used to love playing against like a lot of zone concepts because you can slip through back, you can shoot gaps, knife under things and blow stuff up. So it's kind of what you see here. Just flow into the ball quick, man. That's another staple from these Brian Flores defenses. They run to the football and they tackle well, like we talked about.
Yeah. And in this play specifically, like the Lions are trying to, at least what it looks to be, get David Montgomery off tackle, get him to the outside. But again, you have two really good tackling players for the Vikings literally taking up both of those gaps. Josh Metellus gets on the outside, gets off tackle and is able to fill that gap. And James Mitchell is a little late getting over to seal him. And on the backside of that, David Montgomery can't even cut back inside because Jordan Hicks is there to fill that gap. So it's a really good, play by the Vikings defense, everyone being very sound in their assignments. And Lions only get, I believe it's like a yard or two on this play.
Yeah, they're good at this, man. They're gap sound, not going to make a ton of mistakes, like where you can break off big chunks. Typically, they do. I think it is going to, I like Jonathan Greenard. I think he's a really nice player. Came from Houston, but man, he is not Danielle Hunter. That's another thing when you watch this film, you realize, and he's not even out. Yeah, I wouldn't even say he's even in his prime anymore, but he's still like a dog, man. Danielle Hunter's one of those rare ones, in my opinion, right?
No, absolutely. And we're definitely going to get to a play where Danielle Hunter basically showed up in a very, very big way. But so you have plays like that, like you mentioned, right, Morgan, where, Brian Flores' scheme can prey on a zone concept just because his linebackers are smart enough, they're athletic enough to be able to beat some of these zone blocking schemes and get in the backfield. You also have a defensive line that's pretty good, right? You have Harrison Phillips, you have Jonathan Bullard. Like, these are some really strong defensive tackles, and they showed that last year when they played the Lions as well. Jonathan Bullard does a really good job in this play here. Just perfect defensive tackle technique. Like, this is stuff that you teach young defensive tackles to be able to get leverage, get extension, and be able to press the offensive lineman so that they're in the backfield, and now you have the ability to shed and being able to make a tackle on the running back. But it's just, this is, again, teach tape, I think, is how you kind of described it.
Yeah, this is a good rep. Like, Bullard's strong at the point of attack, man. He snaps Jonah Jackson back, extends, peeks around, and then gets rid of the block and sheds the block and makes the tackle. So Bullard's still there. So like you mentioned, they have Jerry Tillery on the other side, and then we talked about Greenard and Van Ginkel as the outside linebackers, which are going to be, the edge players in a B-flow scheme. So it's good personnel, a little bit different. They got Grugier Hill. Sorry for mispronouncing that. I think he's going to be starting in place of Cashman with him being banged up. So yeah, it's different personnel, but same goals because you still have Flores there.
Yeah. Now, the one player that they don't have there anymore, Morgan, like the play we were just talking about, right? Danielle Hunter. And thank goodness, because I don't need to see Panay take any more reps like this.
No, when I watched this again, I was like, oh my gosh, that did happen. Because you never see anything happen to that. Like, Sewell rarely loses a rep, let alone gets caught like over his skis and like whiffing. But like we talked about, man, Danielle Hunter is like one of those guys. He's super long arms. Like, just if you could create a defensive end in a lab, Danielle Hunter might be, it's like a Danielle Hunter, Julius Peppers type, just monster.
Yeah. Oh yeah, freakish athletic build type of defender. And I, like you mentioned, no, they don't have him anymore. They do have Jonathan Greenard, who is a solid defensive end, right? And so it's something that they still have to be mindful of, because while he may not be the stout, run defender that Danielle Hunter is, he's still someone that can make life miserable for your tackles as an edge setter, as someone who's going to be trying to get after your quarterback. And like we saw there, Danielle Hunter just doing a really good job of beating Panay at the point of attack and then making his presence felt in the backfield and just limiting the space that David Montgomery had to work with. So it's something that the Lions have to be mindful of. Like, you can't lose these one-on-one blocks when you're given those opportunities.
Yeah, because like you said, great point, bro, because it plays right into Flores' plan. Like, the more the Vikings get into those like 3rd and 8 and like plus situations where Flores can get like creative with his blitz packages, the worse I'll feel on Sunday. Like, I have confidence in Ben Johnson and Jared Goff to convert, a few here and there, but those are tough, man. And if you start doing it too often, you open yourself up to possibilities that we as Lions fans do not want to entertain. So something
Yeah.
to think about when you're watching the game for sure.
And so another thing that we're going to get into with this next play. So I think like whenever it comes to the Vikings defense, Morgan, like in so many years past, it's been, back in the day, it was like Jared Allen was like the Vikings defender that you had to worry about. And then it was like Harrison Smith was a guy that you always had to think about, or Eric Kendricks. And they've always had like these big name players, and Harrison Smith is still there, and they have names on that defense when you talk about Harrison Smith, Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin. But when I was watching the tape, there's two names that like really popped off, and we've already shown one of these guys or both of these guys off in two other plays, and that's Jonathan Bullard and Josh Metellus. Like those two guys will instantly just pop off will pop off on the screen with their ability to make plays in the backfield. And that's one of the things that we see here, where Metellus does a really good job of really like putting some pop on Sam Laporta on this blitz, and then Bullard just not being blocked, and being able to then make another play in the backfield.
Yeah, Bullard's a big guy that can move. Like he moves pretty well for being a big old man. Like I give him credit, so he's a good player. I think Greener's a really good player. I put Bullard in like that. He's a good player. But yeah, this Metellus does this kind of stuff a lot, man. He's physical, like because Sam Laporta is good at these like wham style blocks where he's working across the formation, catching somebody. But yeah, Josh meets him, and I think Laporta is really strong. I think stronger than people and really get in terms of blocking. So, But Metellus will do stuff like this. He'll come in there with his hair on fire, and he's another reason why the Vikings are good. It's important to remember, like we talked about at the top, like the Vikings have played in a lot of advantageous situations, like where they didn't really have to even worry about the run because teams were down so fast that you just have to throw the game plan out the window and throw it 50 times.
Yep.
Which, like we talked about, plays right into what they want to do. So it's important to stay on schedule. I know I sound like I'm beating the dead horse here. Hate that saying, to be honest with you. I need to come up with another one. But yeah, you got to stay on schedule. Don't get behind the sticks and make it. And if you do, don't make it a habit.
Yeah. And I think it's also important, like in a game like this where Minnesota is going to bring their physicality and their defense, like you have to match that physicality on the offensive end, which I don't think the Lions got out physicaled in that game, but I think it was more of a stalemate. Like I think they very much met the challenge, and this is what it has to look like, is that, again, there may be downs and distances where you're not getting 6, 7, 8 yards per carry, which is, again, kind of what we've been used to seeing from the Lions this early part of the season, that they've been kind of able to run on everybody. It might be a different game against Minnesota this week. And so you have to have that mentality of like, hey, we're going to have to go in here and it's going to be, one of those blue collar, like, slugfest type of games. And your offensive line, your tight ends, your tackles, fullbacks, all of those players, like, they have to have that mentality to be able to block hard, because you have guys like Jonathan Bullard and Josh Metellus that are like going to bring it on every single down.
Similar to how the Lions play on defense. It would be lovely to see what we've been seeing, where the Lions are just displacing defensive lines, like resetting the line of scrimmage, because that sets up running lanes where you can get David Montgomery and Jameer downhill. And that's when I think the Lions could really start cooking, in my opinion. So hopefully that's what we see on Sunday. That'd be nice.
Yep. So can't be out physical. You have to make sure you win your one-on-ones. You can't be, well, I guess this kind of goes into like, this next play that we're going to look to kind of goes into like the first play that we looked at, but I feel like the Lions just can't afford to be too predictable in certain downs and distances. Like it's very well documented, Morgan, that the Lions love to run the football. And if it's a short, second and short, third and short type of situation, they're going to try and run the football. And you just can't afford to be predictable in these situations in a matchup like this, where you only need a yard or two. Let's be a little creative, or at least be a little more physical at the point of attack, right?
Yeah, and I like that you included this one. So the Lions are in 21 personnel. There's 8 in the box. It's 2nd and 1, to your point about being predictable. So 2nd and 1, they have 8 in the box. In my opinion, this is where Flores could possibly get himself in trouble on Sunday, because of one man. If your two receivers out there are Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, and Minnesota gives you a look like this, I hope Goff checks into something, and let's see if Shaq Griffin or Gilmore can stay with JMO for 50 or 60 yards. That's, you know what I'm saying?
Like
That's
vertically
where
or horizontally. Like that's the thing that's like funny.
either
Like
or.
either or. Like try to catch him vertically or try to catch him on a crossing route. It's not probably going to go the way you want it to.
No, bro, he's gonna hit that meat like the road runner, and he's gonna like be sprinting down the field in Minnesota. So I think this is where, like, to your point, I love it, because don't get, like, if they give you this look 2nd and 1, if you get into a situation like that 2nd and 2, in my, like, yeah, sometimes you want to move the sticks, but sometimes that's shot down. Like, you're right here, they're at the 46 shot play. Let's go. Like, who's out there right now? Last year, I can't remember. That looks like Donovan Peoples-Jones, and is that Amon-Ra at the bottom? No, Amon-Ra wears black cleats.
No,
Khalif.
I was gonna say that's Khalif. So like you don't
So,
even
yeah.
have the personnel to even make them think it's a pass play.
No, like Khalif I like Khalif as a player, but not the same as having Jamison out there. And he's established, man. What's he averaging? Almost 23 yards a catch. So it'll be interesting to see if Minnesota gives the Lions, like, these kinds of looks, right? Because if they do,
Yeah.
this is where, in my opinion, Ben Johnson needs to stretch them out and soften them up early, just by, getting JMO horizontally or vertically, like you said, and make them think twice about putting 8 people in the box. And that's where the conundrum is, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I love how, like, you pointed out, like, who are the receivers out there? Because, again, I think it plays into being predictable, right? If the defenders started looking around like, oh, we got DPJ, or, like, in that situation, we have DPJ and Khalif, it's more than likely not a pass. Now, it could be, right? It's not to say that Khalif is a horrible receiver, or the same with DPJ, but, like, it's a different mentality if it is Amon-Ra and JMO on the field, where it's like, okay, yeah, this still could be play action. This still could go to either of these guys. And a guy like Amon-Ra, who in short yardage situations is a threat, a guy like JMO that's a threat on a deep route, like, your defense has to be on high alert, where it's like everybody can't just sell out for the run. And that's kind of what I thought happened on that play. Like, everyone just sells out for it. And it worked in their favor. So there's a lot of things that I think Ben Johnson and Jared Goff are going to have to keep in mind when it comes down to trying to get this run game going. But I wouldn't be surprised if this game kind of does go the way it did last year in Week 18, where it's going to require some in-game heroics from Jared Goff, protecting the football, but probably a big day for him in terms of how many yards he's able to throw for. Because I do think Minnesota is going to try to make the line get it the hard way. I don't think they're going to come into this game and say, like, oh, no, you can just run all over us. They're going to try to make them earn it. You're going to have to be able to take advantage when it comes down to the pass game, in my opinion.
I agree. I think they're, like, if they might run the ball semi-effectively, but I don't know that this is going to be a game where the Lions just run over them like they have in, like, Dallas or Arizona or the Rams. Like, I don't think that's going to be one of those games, to your point. And let's see some shot plays early out of, like, 21 personnel, 12 and 13 personnel, like, these heavier, like 2 and 3 tight ends, two backs, because you force them to make a decision. Like, okay, yes, there's only 2 receivers out there, but one's an all-pro and then one's a big play machine that's still ascending. So what you want to do? And Amon-Ra is so good at creating space quickly, in my opinion. Like, so if you are going to put him, Gilmore's a nice player still, but is he nice enough to hang with a 24-year-old all-pro that's, like, in his prime? I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you have, like, and it's not just like Gilmore, right, at 34. You also have Harrison Smith at 34. Like, you have 2 30-plus
some old
secondary players out there. Test that early, especially, again, like you were mentioning, when if they decide to slip up and give you a single high safety look, check whatever the play is, whatever the hell the play was.
See you, Waymo.
And just wave.
Yeah.
Like, I would even just wave at him, like, you know what this means. But I still, at the end of the day, Morgan, I expect this to be a close game, like it was all of last year when they played, even with backup quarterbacks. Like, it was a very close game when Detroit and Minnesota played. I expect the same thing to happen this year. I got the Lions coming out on top with this one. I believe I had the score like 27-24. Pretty close. I think the offense is going to get theirs at times, even if it comes down to, like, fourth quarter where Minnesota's trying to get a win. But I think the Lions are going to score just enough points. And I do think, like, the defense is going to have its ups and downs without Aiden there for the rest of the year. So it's going to be their first test without him. And we're going to see, like, what kind of pressure they can generate with, again, a different look on that defensive line a little bit.
I feel you. I'm going to go 27-20. I need to go put that in 27-20 Lions. I should clarify. I do, if you guys are consistently watching these, one day we'll pick against the Lions. But I feel good about this game. I know the Vikings are a good team. I'm not completely dismissing that. I just think they haven't really been tested the way, other teams have, just because of a matter of circumstance. The sample size is small. There's a period of, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's the NFL, right? It's not their fault that they played a less than 100% 49ers team, right? They at this point, Morgan, their most impressive win, in my opinion, is the Houston Texans win.
Definitely,
just because of the way that they jumped them and basically fended them off for the entire game. That's the game that's yo, I didn't expect you to do that to Houston, right?
They smacked them. It was in Minnesota, and Minnesota's a tough place to play. That's something that'll surely be a factor this Sunday. But I'm excited to watch it, man. I think it's going to be a good game. And yeah, I just hopefully we'll have some good stuff to talk about after another dub.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. Let us know what you think of the outcome of this game. Who do you have winning between the Lions and the Minnesota Vikings? What do you think? Which team do you think has the advantage? What do you think of the strength and weaknesses that we pointed out when we talked about the Vikings defense? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know all of that in the comment section below. Also, you can always go over to prideofdetroit.com, like I mentioned at the top of this video, and just catch up on all of the new articles that have been uploaded and written over there. There's been a lot of stuff put out about the injury report. If you hadn't had a chance to read up on Ali McNeil's contract extension, definitely go check that out. That's also a really good read around this time. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for this video. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well if you really enjoyed this content. It really helps out the channel. And like I said, subscribing and hitting the notification bell makes it easier for you guys to find our content so that you can kind of stay informed with everything that's Lions related. So with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.